The Apalachciola River, that's what we call her now, sculpted in the mist of time before first humans set foot on her banks, valued for commerce by Native American civilizations, indispensable to the European settlers, and through the centuries following, a great life-giving resource. The product of commerce has changed often through the years, but always the wealth of the land has traveled down the river, and in return, the refined staples of human life moved up the river. For many hundreds of years, in a far simpler time, that trade was made possible by wooden boats. Those boats are woven into the tapestry of our past, and it is the history and memory of those wood boats that fuels the vision of the Apalachciola Maritime Museum.
My family began their residence here in the late 1840s, as best I can ascertain, when my great-great-grandfather came down from Winthrop, Massachusetts, as a stevedore aboard one of the schooners of the time, and decided to take up residence here, and quickly moved into the river and coastal traffic, that profession that was prevalent then, primarily related to cotton and other trade commerce items being moved up the Apalachciola River. And his name was Samuel Augustus Floyd. From that time period forward, my family has been here. My mother's side of the family, of more recent heritage, ran Quality Seafood, where we had a fleet of 8 shrimp boats, each named after a point of the compass, the norther, the nor'easter, the nor'wester, etc., that worked the shrimp harvesting both locally and down throughout Florida and over to the west into the Mississippi and Louisiana area. We had a marine ways where we pulled up and worked on those boats, and as a young man, as young as age 6 or 7, I was out there working on the old wooden hulls myself with a caulking iron and the old cotton caulking and oakum that would be used to prep it for a New Year's adventure out in the bay in the Gulf. And I think that somewhat makes a mark on a person that lasts throughout their life. But I spent all my summers here. But all along the while, I knew that I would be back in Apalachciola with the mission of doing great things for the river and the bay and the people. And so it's a calling. I was very fortunate in my business endeavors. I had huge successes in automating transaction flows. I wrote a lot of software, implemented a lot of systems all in the healthcare environment, and ultimately sold it to the nation's largest bank, which has allowed me to fund these endeavors here at the Maritime Museum and 106 miles upstream at the Chattahoochee location of the Maritime Museum. I came back and started doing river trips about 10 or 12 years ago, all the way down from Columbus, and in that time I really found an attachment to this old mighty river, 5th largest in all of North America, where I swear late at night, if you're swimming on a summer night, you can almost feel a heartbeat. In 2007, we acquired the existing property at 103 Water Street from Buddy Ward's family. This is the scallop processing operation and I think shrimp processing operation off and on too. With a lot of support from the family, they wanted to see this kind of thing come around. And over the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, we've been working toward a end objective with this structure that would help instill in local peoples and visitors a sense of pride, a sense of leadership and environmental and resource conservation ethics that could be a icon up and down the river basin. When evaluating the opportunity for new and emerging economic commerce, you have to somewhat look into the crystal ball. And in that, I guess, first you look at how things have changed over the course of time. From the late 1700s, early 1800s, and all periods prior to that, the river was primarily used for transportation and limited commerce. But as the antebellum era came about, and before there were railroads or highways, the Apalachciola River, Chattahoochee Flint, was the interstate highway. If you travel the river and you look at the charts and provided by the Corps of Engineers or what have you, you'll see every bend of the river had a name. Loxham's Landing, Iola Landing, every one was like an interstate exit ramp is today, where the boats could stop and people could gather to exchange commerce. And so it continued to evolve, and as railroads and other means of transportation came about, and the antebellum period transitioned from cotton production into sawmill, lumber production, and that ultimately has waned. There's a few still that make a living from deadhead cypress and pulling old timbers from the bottom of the river. Seafood production blossomed in the 60s, 70s, 80s, arguably the 90s. I think there will be a continuing economic commerce for locally grown, naturally harvested premium products, products of reputation, many of which rely upon steady, predictable, maintained flows consistent with historical patterns and the lack of pollutions in the bay and river system. But all the same, we must recognize that that's not going to be the lifeblood that it once was. No more so than the timber harvesting, the early part of this century and late 1800s, or the cotton antebellum era. It's been a long time since a bale of cotton came down the Apalachciola River. And so, looking into the crystal ball, I see that the thing that is increasingly missing in the world as we know it today is the opportunity to traverse time backwards and have an experience of what it used to be like. To reconnect with the green world, the flora and fauna diversity of the Apalachciola River, I think would compare favorably with experiences one might find in Costa Rica, South Africa, Australia, or wherever. And then the cultural heritage of the peoples that made this area what it is, Native American, European, etc. It's a touch with authenticity. I mean, there's the Disney World thing, and there's the thing that we find in all big cities, plenty of forms of entertainment, from art museums to movie houses to what have you. What we have that's unique in Apalachciola, and has been preserved well, is essentially a trip back in time. In all of Franklin County, there's one red light recently installed. Along the entire Apalachciola River Basin, there's very little housing development, and Apalachciola itself still has a lot of the original structures and look and feel from when I was a child, back in the late 50s, early 60s. And so where does this go in terms of future economic opportunity? Well, I think there's an opportunity for us to take a lead role in promoting those values for our local people, to instill a sense of pride and heritage and ownership, as well as for people around the world to be able to travel here and get a taste or a sensation of what it was like 100 years ago or 200 years ago. And that is something you're not going to find in a music park or a Disney World or what have you, or a movie theater. You've got to be out there and experience it. And to that end, we brought in the Heritage, the 58-foot wooden schooner, or ketch rather, that we brought in '07 that started our sailing program, and is morphing now as we seek to bring about the wood boat building programs, building and maintenance programs to support the maritime trades and the emerging economy that I think will find a lot of enthusiasm about coming and getting involved in those type of activities, much as I have seen it happen in Beaufort, North Carolina. The presence of that Maritime Museum there has brought about a huge renewal and an interest and enthusiasm about the old classic wooden dories that were used by previous generations to traverse Pamlico Sound. And so too I think it will apply here, and also watercraft that could run up the river, spanning the mix from right up through the estuaries, little flats rigs. I think those kind of things can be reintroduced, re-engineered, and built custom or unique for our environment here that will promote trade, commerce, and say it as well, collectibles. I've seen a rejuvenation of that all along the northeast coast of the U.S. Anybody can own a fiberglass boat, but it takes a real man of character to own a wooden boat, or a real person, male or female. And that too becomes a new trade that really is unique to the Apalachciola area. So we look at that, the opportunity for environmental, cultural, heritage, historical tourism and education that is refreshing, renewed, unique in source. You're not going to see a rerun of that anywhere outside of Apalachciola. That strengthens the spirit, that provides inspiration and a sense of ownership, which is part of the message we need to get out to all the peoples of the basin, not just about Apalachciola or this particular portion of the river, but all the way up to the headwaters where this river starts at the base of the Appalachian Trail. Return to the days of the riverboat trade, to see riverboat paddle wheel engines or paddle wheel propulsion to push boats all the way up to Columbus for the same kind of cultural heritage, environmental education, but on a higher end of scale. You're familiar with the paddle trips that we run. Just finished last week at the beginning. We came in just in time for the blessing of the fleet, a group of 30 roughly paddlers, and had made an 8-day transit from Chattahoochee down, and it was well received, and it's just another form of the economic tourism, the economic growth and opportunity to get youth involved, or elderly, or to get folks along the basin involved with providing those services to where they take a sense of ownership in it and pride and see it that the preservation of the resource is linked to economic opportunity. For anything to be sustained long term in a capitalist economy, there needs to be benefit to peoples that are involved in it. And the vision is that the same type of economy that we see going on in a place like Costa Rica, because of its splendid natural resources, can be realized here in Apalachciola. Part of the plan in providing this investment in a new and improved maritime museum building is to make it an icon.
Well, this building represents the future here in Apalachciola in a way that is unique, because this building is going to be built to a special set of standards. Those standards are called LEED standards. That's an acronym for a program that's developed by the United States Green Building Council. And what that program does is, through an elaborate series of documentations, demonstrate that a building is built with a minimum amount of impact on the environment during construction, and then that building is operated with a minimum amount of impact on the environment during its entire life cycle. Now, the concept of a green roof on this building is very important for a number of reasons. One is, a green roof actually helps reduce the impact of that building on the environment. It helps the building restore those things that are damaged in the environment by its construction. The second thing on this particular building that a green roof does is provide a learning laboratory. This is a place where we can bring the public and they can see what a living roof is like on a building. We can demonstrate and explain all of the aspects about it. Hopefully, when this building is built and operating, it will provide an inspiration for others to follow the same path when they build buildings in this basin. We're hoping that we can bring these ideas forward in a way that others will be able to use them. This building is sort of marrying the past with the future here in Apalachciola. Boat building was a very important part of this community in its past. And what we're doing in this building is establishing a boat restoration facility that will be an operating facility where wooden boats will be restored, and there will also be a learning facility that the public can come and watch the operations and begin to understand how that was part of the past here in Apalachciola.
George Floyd came by the offices of Garlic Environmental looking to update the permits for the dock and the marine facility at what used to be one of the world's seafood processing plants. George saw that I was definitely interested in plans for the museum. I am a sailor. I've been around boats and boating my entire life. I'm a native Floridian. I love the water and I love the history of it. And George and I had many conversations and really hit it off. We have a similar goal, and we're looking to get to the same place with this museum, and hopefully the rest of the community will catch a fire the way it's inspired me to want better for our community.
I think it's a different kind of economic opportunity than building a house or working in a grocery store. Not that those are bad. The economic opportunities that come from these type of trades are truly unique and expanding the realization of life.
I've been building boats for around 45 years, and for being taught, I guess I was self-taught. Most of the time, when I first started building the boats, I only had a Black & Decker jigsaw and one Black & Decker power tool, circular saw, and a square and a hammer and a nail apron. And I went to the Craftsman table saw and a bandsaw. And all of it's Craftsman. Every bit of it come from Sears, and I've never had any other kind other than the power, the circular saws. They were different. But that's all I use is that one 10-inch saw and this bandsaw, a 12-inch bandsaw, and a 7.5-inch circular saw and some botched jigsaws, and I got a couple of sanders and some tri-squares and some framing squares and bevel squares, and then I got the claw hammers, and that's basically the tools I use, which is very low key, not very many. Never had a blueprint or a plan. I've had a lot of people bring them here and I look at them. My blueprint or my plans for the boat is they're custom built, and if you come here or anyone else come here and they wanted a boat, and if they could put that picture they have in my head, they were built to fit that individual. Well, my son Scott, I raised him, the only boy I got, and he worked here and he knows how to build a boat. But he's in youth ministry and he's not interested in this. I've had others to come and work with me. I don't have anyone that's wanted to pick up the trade, not in my family. but there's a few around here. Michael J. Carmichael is building them now, and I'll build one once in a while just to be doing it, just for the fun of it.
You're doing things that are unique, that carry on traditions, the wood boat building traditions, the seafood harvesting traditions, the traditions of river travel and life that are something that should be maintained and carried through the generations. And how are we going to do that if we, given the changing economic times and the changing demands for seafood and other products, how are we going to do that if we don't find a way that people can make money doing it? They got to survive. And so the opportunity to educate your participants that come through, the most recent group we took had folks from Montana, Atlanta, as local as Apalachciola, but all across the country. And every one of them came away with a sense of love for this river. But so we've promoted our values, we've promoted conservation, stewardship, concern with every participant, and plus we're making money while we're doing it. We're not selling them, oranges, or plastic alligators or the things that you can buy along the interstate. We're providing them with a sense of inner peace, happiness, understanding that helps us in the long term. And they go back and they tell others of their experiences and bring it back here, and they're, through others that learn of it, they learn of the conservation ethic, the stewardship ethic, and that too comes back to us as a dividend. In addition to the original providing of services, we're selling our message and providing economic commerce, but also promoting the things that mean the most to us at the same time. And I think that's a great opportunity. And what better way to kick it off than to have a truly stunning maritime museum that incorporates the latest principles and guidelines of energy efficiency, ergonomic designs, through the LEED certification process. I mean, it gives us an ability to stand on a soapbox higher than the rest and say, look what we've done to set the example, to set the standard here in Apalachciola.
The museum will belong to the people of Apalachciola. Every local business will appreciate its attraction, and every local person will be proud to visit, volunteer, or even work at the museum in one of its many departments or collections. The most exciting department to me is the wooden boat building and repair facility. Historically, trade along the Florida coast occurred most often by small sailing craft used to ferry persons or small cargoes ashore. Wooden boats of this size are just right to be produced by volunteers and community groups at the Apalachciola Maritime Museum.
The first improvement for this building site has been to construct a concrete dock, which you can see out the back. That concrete dock is a major facility, and what's going to happen is it's going to be improved with trellis work, arbors, railings, to become something that will be attractive on this waterfront, both from the riverside and from the land side. When that dock is completed, then we will begin to be able to start the construction of the building.
Part of the motivator is to do a maritime museum and to build these things is because it's a family heritage, and it's honoring my fathers and grandfathers and all the family traditions. Every one of them made their living on the water. brings happiness is an achievement of mission.